What do you think is the most important document to a stage manager? That's right, it's the contract, but the second most important document is the script. And today I'm going to show you my secret to flawless formatting every single time. My name is Kent, and this is your half-hour call. Attention cast and crew, this is your half-hour call. Half hour to the top of the show. Half hour, please. Alrighty friends, we are back with another episode of the Almost Complete Guide to Stage Management, and today we are talking about the stage manager's security blanket, better known as the script. You'll be hard-pressed to find a stage manager in a rehearsal room without their script in arm's reach. And since we spend so much time with our eyes perusing those pages, we deserve a copy with a format that works for our job. Unfortunately, a lot of the times that means we have to create it. If you're doing a published play or musical, especially in high school or college, your theater is more than likely going through a publishing house to order their scripts. Plays typically come in a small booklet like this. These are great for actors because it's small, compact, easy to carry, and damn near indestructible. Unfortunately for stage managers, there's almost no white space or margins, it's double-sided, and if you try to put it down on a desk, it's gonna close. Musicals, by contrast, typically come in larger books like this. They'll have the libretto, which is the dialogue and lyrics, in the front, and then the sheet music, typically for just the vocal lines, in the back. This is my favorite format as an actor because it's really nice to have both the music and the lyrics, and the formatting is really easy to read and has enough white space and margins for you to write in your blocking. Again, unfortunately for stage managers, it's double-sided, and there's just enough white space to write in one track of blocking, not nearly enough to document the entire show. If you're doing a new work, or working at a professional theater, you might be in luck. A lot of times, these theaters get their scripts in PDF form and print them off for actors, which means that you as the stage manager might be able to just play with the margins and get something that'll work for you. But if you're like me, you want more control over the formatting of the script. And for musicals, it'll be really helpful to have an editable version when you have to go back and add dance counts for dance breaks so you can call the show. And that means that you have to type it out yourself. The current standard for script software on Broadway is called Final Draft. And Final Draft fluency is one of the things that Broadway production stage managers say is the #1 marketable skill that will help you break into the Broadway industry. As of the filming of this video, I have never personally used Final Draft, but it is something I plan to look into because it's a skill that I would really like to be able to add to my tool belt. If you're a student, they do offer a hefty student discount. I believe it's 50%, and there's also a free 30-day trial if you just want to try out the program before purchasing it. All of that aside, my go-to software is still Microsoft Word. It's really easy to use, your entire team is really likely to have access to it, and it gives you almost unlimited control over how your document looks. Speaking of how your document looks, the font that you choose for your script is going to be your most important decision. It's also a really personal decision because you're going to be spending hours upon hours staring at this, and if you're the production stage manager, you're going to be looking at it every night as you call the show. At one time it was said that serif fonts were easier to read in print, and sans serif fonts are easier to read on a digital screen. There are a lot of conflicting views on this, so I wouldn't put too much stock in it, but you very well might have a preference. I may be completely alone in this, but I find that if I have to stare at sans serif fonts for more than about 5 minutes, I get super annoyed. Because of this, my go-to font for scripts is actually Times New Roman. It's really easy to read, it's not unpleasant to look at, and you're pretty much going to have access to it on any device that you could read your script on. But again, font is an incredibly personal choice, and there are no wrong answers. Except Wingdings. Wingdings is a wrong answer. Now that we've successfully chosen our font, let's dive into the formatting of our script. In this case, I'm going to be doing the first couple of pages of our musical example, Dear Evan Hansen. Alright, here we are in Microsoft Word for PC, because that's what I have access to and I use, but these tips and tricks that I'm going to share with you are compatible with any operating system and any word processing program. One thing to keep in mind is that this is not the way to edit scripts. This is a way to edit scripts. It's my way to edit scripts. It's my favorite way, and I love this method, but I'm not going to tell you that you have to do it this way. You could interview 100 stage managers, and they would give you 100 different ways to format a script, and they're all correct as long as they work for that stage manager. Once again, the only wrong answer is wingdings. So the most important thing is to just start playing around with it and figuring out what you like to do, what works best for your brain and the way you like to work. So the first thing to consider is the margins. I like to have 1.5 inches on the right because that is where I like to write my cues. And I find that even in my blocking script, I like to have a little bit more space over here on the right than on the left. For the top and bottom, I move it to somewhere in the neighborhood of 1/2 inch, just to give me as much space as possible on a single page. The reason for this is actually pretty simple. It's really important that your script page numbers match up with the actor's script page numbers, which match up with the director's script page numbers, and so on and so forth. So even if you have different formatting, it's important that your page numbers match. And I find it's way easier to go in and add a page break because you can fit more information on your page than it is to go and label your page 1A, 1B because you didn't have enough room to fit what the actors have on their script page. So all of that said, the next thing we need to do is edit our header. The only thing that I personally put in the footer is the page number. So I put the page number, bottom of the page, plain number in the middle. Super simple. Okay, now that we've got our page all set up and formatted how we like it, it is time for me to reveal my secret to script formatting success. My secret to easy script formatting is to insert a 2-column invisible table. We're not going to have it invisible while we're typing out the script, but before we print it or send it off anywhere, we're going to make it invisible. The table is going to do so much work for us that we don't need to do. First off, it's going to keep everything in nice, neat rows and columns that we would otherwise have to manufacture with tabs and style formatting or anything else that we might need. Number 2, it's really easy to merge cells and to split cells. So whether we need something to go across the entire page, we can do that. Or if we have multiple people singing at once, which I know for a fact happens quite a bit at Dear Evan Hansen, it's a lot easier to split those up than it is in any other formatting. Number 3, if you need to change any formatting setting, it's going to be a lot easier to do this because it's in a table. And if you need to change the margins or something, it's not going to mess up the rest of your formatting, and it's going to make your life so much easier. Number 4, this one is just personal preference, but I really like it when the character name is separate from the dialogue and the stage directions. This allows me to kind of skim along if I'm calling the show or if I'm doing line notes or something, and I can find where each person speaks a lot easier than if it's something like in this formatting where I would have to kind of search a little bit more for the character name. And number 5, it gives us really easy visual control of the white space. So this table is going to show us exactly how many lines are between different lines of dialogue, and we can really easily split the table, make page breaks, and control where the page breaks are in the table a lot easier. Once you've got your table in your document, the first thing you're going to want to do is type out the longest character name you have, which for me is Connor, and then pull this to be just past that character name. So now we've got our column for character names and our column for dialogue. So the first things first is we need to merge this cell so that we can say Act 1, Scene 1. You can do this however you want. You can do this on the same line. I prefer to do it like this just because it's a really nice break and gives us some extra white space to include maybe a scene change cue or blocking for a transition or whatever. So the first thing is some stage directions. So it says lights, so this is exactly what I'm talking about, where I can fit more information on my page than they can fit on the individual page of the script, which is what I want because I don't want to have to label anything 1A or 1B. So what I'm going to do, the page break is right in the middle of Heidi's line. I'm going to create a new row on the table and then just do Control-Enter, or I believe it would be Command-Enter on a Mac, but don't quote me on that because I'm not a Mac person. And then here we are, we have our next page. We're at the point where a song starts, since this is our musical example. So I'm going to merge the cells again, and what I like to do is I like to go change the shading of this and just make it 2 or 3 shades darker, about 2 shades darker, and then I bold the whole thing, label it number 1, or whatever. Normally there will be a numbering system for the songs. Anybody have a map? Some folks like to have the character names in a little parenthetical. I tend to not do that because if there's too many people in a song and it's not the full company, it can bleed over into another line, and I just think that looks sloppy. But if you find it helpful, you can also change the font size. You can just make it its own new line, whatever you want to do to make that work for you. Alright, so now we've got 2 pages of complete script, so I'm going to zoom out just a bit and show you what it looks like when we click the No Borders button. Check that guy out. Look at it. It's so lovely. It's so easy to read. You can follow along super simply. And I just really like this formatting. But again, everything with scripts is a personal choice, right? You need to make your own decisions about what works for you and your style of stage management. So I'm going to go ahead and keep typing. There's one more thing that I want to show you. I'm going to skip over to the next page and show you what happens when we have dueling text. Because if you're doing anything other than this table situation, you are going to have to add word boxes and play with them, and it's going to be an absolute nightmare. But this table system makes it super, super easy. Check it out. So I'm on the next page. I'm skipping a little bit until Cynthia and Heidi start overlapping. So in this instance, I only have 2, so I still only need 2 columns, but you could really easily do this with more than 2 columns, and it makes your life so simple. So here I'm going to center these. It's going to change the formatting a little bit, but not so much that it's impossible to read. So we've got Cynthia and Heidi, and then they're going to start singing. And then I would keep going like this, and ultimately when you take away the borders, it still looks super clear. Right, so this is super easy to read, super easy to follow, super easy to call off of, and it takes probably like 4 or 5 different dialogue or lyrics happening simultaneously before it starts getting a little iffy in terms of whether or not it's easy to read. And that alone to me makes it worth using this invisible table system. I just think it makes it really easy to follow script, and it's super simple to do and super simple to edit later, which is really important when you need to go back and add your dance counts or something like that. So there you have it. Those are my super secret tips to perfectly formatted scripts every single time. But the most important takeaway that you should have is that you should have agency to play around with the formatting to find out what works best for you. If you have any secret tips for formatting your scripts, leave them for me in the comments down below so we can all share in that wonderful knowledge. I'll put a link in the description below to a PDF and a Word doc version of a similarly formatted script, but for the play that goes wrong, that we're going to use later when we do blocking notation. Feel free to use this script to play around with the formatting and get a feel for what works best for you and what makes it most legible and easiest to use for you as a stage manager. If you got some value out of this video, please do me a favor and hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss a single video with more tips to stage management success. I do not have a Patreon, and I do not plan on making a Patreon. If this fact bums you out, please take the money you would have given me and give it to one of these awesome organizations instead. The Actors Fund, Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS, or my personal favorite option, go buy a ticket to see some local equity regional theater at a theater near you, because seeing theater is the absolute best way to learn how to make good theater. Thank you so much for watching, liking, and subscribing. My name is Kent, and this has been your half-hour call.